Welcome back to Screencast number 2. Hopefully I get the audio better in this one. It was too quiet last time, so hopefully this one will be better. I've seen a few videos recently of people going through their vimrc files and sort of just showing what's in there and any particularly interesting things about them. I am one of those people who have spent far too many hours on the contents of this file, so I figure there might be something of some use in here to somebody out there. So I'm doing this video and I will put them up on GitHub, and as usual I will write about any interesting new mappings or things on my site as I go along in the future. But for now, let's just see what's in here. Okay, so just to quickly run through the basics, which you probably already have most of in your vimrc. Set no compatible to use Vim's improvements rather than vi, hence the M, and enable file type detection and all that good stuff. Auto read just means that if you have a file open in Vim and say edit it in TextMate or something, and then come back to Vim, it just makes the file reload so that you're still working with the latest version of the file rather than the version as it was before you edited it with an external editor. Just UTF-8 encodings all around. When there are fold markers, I start with all of them collapsed, just because I find that when everything's collapsed, you can sort of read through the file and just jogs your memory, for example, if you haven't worked with the file for a bit. So that's quite nice. As I say, fold method, I just use the default, which is the 3 opening and closing curly braces. gdefault is quite nice in so much as if you do a substitution, normally you would do global at the end to go past just the first result, and with gdefault set you can leave off the global, so just globals by default, which saves a few keystrokes because I'm not sure I ever wanted to just match against the first result. Hidden just allows buffers to be hidden rather than closed. History just keeps a bigger history of the commands entered. Ignore case just ignores, or rather it'll match against upper and lower cases, but it works with smart case so that if you regex for something all lowercase, it'll match lower and upper, but if you add an upper in the regex, then it'll only return upper results. Incremental search is keyword is just nice for languages that prefer snake case to camel case. It just means that the word movements will stop at underscores. So for example, DW will delete the word and not write to the next space. Lazy redraw is supposedly means you have better performance when playing macros because it isn't redrawing all the time. Match pairs is mostly for HTML, so you can see as I move my cursor over the opening and closing, rather the opening curly braces up here, it matches the closing ones at the bottom, and by default it does that with curly braces and things, but not with HTML tags. So match pairs, adding the opening closing tag characters whose names I have temporarily forgotten just means that the tags will match. No backup and no swap file because Git and version control. Show break just means that if the when the window is isn't wide enough to show the full line, it'll show a little character saying that the line is soft wrapped rather. Smart case, as I say, works with ignore case up at the top. Split below and split right just open splits where you'd expect to see them rather than where Vim defaults to putting them. More encoding, turn off the bell sound, enable wild menu, and just set the order completion suggestions are shown in the wild menu. This is one that I don't see in many, which I'm not entirely sure, in many vimrcs, which I'm not entirely sure why. It just means that when you are in netrw and you shift D to delete a folder, if the folder has files in it, then netrw will show an error, and with this it'll just rm it recursively, so even if there's files in the folder you won't get the error, and it'll just delete the folder and just turn off the banner at the top. Plugins. Camel case motion is quite nice, just for languages like JavaScript, for example, that standardize with use camel case as standard rather than snake case. Again, it just means that you can, as you can see, just motion through camel case words with W and B and E and things, rather than going right to the end. Control P, fuzzy finder, I think most people have come across. Vim trimmer just rips out all of the white space. For example, if there are spaces at the end of a line or something, when the file's written, it just gets rid of the spaces, so it just keeps things tidy. Editor config to load in any editor configuration set by the project to override my defaults. Super tab is nice in that when you're in insert mode and want a completion, you can just tab and it'll show the completion menu rather than whatever the keyboard shortcut is to actually show that menu. It's just handier. Tabular is nice. For example, if I put some of these out of whack and then I just visually select all the lines and just go tab and align on the open quotation mark, it'll just align all those up. Control P delete allows you to close buffers from inside Control P, which I'm not sure why it doesn't do by default, but there we go. Goyo is for writing. I have it set up so if I just do leader P, it centers everything and gets rid of distractions and centers things, which is nice to have. I'm not a fan of how Goyo works particularly, in so much as it creates a new tab and then loads things into that tab, so that if you :Q out of it, then the file's actually still there. So, yeah. And I tried, was it light DFM or something, light distraction free mode, which is another plugin for sort of adding a margin, but it only adds it on the left side and it doesn't calculate the center. It just, you set how many columns you want it to offset the side from. So Goyo's better, but not perfect. Ack.vim is, despite the name, a search wrapper that can be used for anything, not just Ack. So I have it set up for ripgrep, but it can be used with Ack or Silver Searcher or whatever you fancy. Scratch is just Scratch gives you a Scratch window. So if I just do GS, then there's a Scratch file, and it's nice because it automatically sticks you in insert mode. And if you just escape, it'll, as soon as you leave insert mode, the insert mode it opened the window with you in. It'll close the Scratch window, and if you just GS again, then everything's still there. But there we go. That's quite nice. Indent guides is nice. I have it turned off by default, but if you're going through a long file that has a lot of indentation, then I've lead at IG to turn it on, but you can't see it in this file because there's no, I suppose if I do indent a couple of things and IG, you can see that it just puts each column in a different tone, so that you can see more clearly where things open and close in, as I say, a messily indented file, or just a file with lots of indentations. Vim Polyglot is very nice. It uses plugs sort of on-demand behavior, so that instead of loading in a library for JavaScript highlighting and a library for Ruby and another library for Rust or whatever it is you write things in, Polyglot will just load whichever one is needed depending on the file type. So very nice. gundo is just an undo tree. Vim remembers your undo history, so yes. So if you toggle it, then you can go back through your history, and sort of if you've made changes and then undone and then made different changes, you can go back and see the changes that in other programs would normally be overwritten. So very handy. Matchit just provides more matching for the percent key, which will take you to the opening and closing of what will it match here? Here it's matching the opening and closing characters. So this works with functions, and as in the the function parens, but it just matches between them. So it's nice. For example, if you're on the line and you tab, you go straight to it. So if I have, say, thing in here and I want to change the contents of that, then rather than, I don't know, word motioning or something, I can just go percentage, which I have remapped to tab, which we'll see later. But anyway, you just go tab and then DIB to delete in block. So that's very nice, just handy. Abolish is one that I only actually put in here today and haven't had much time to sort of play with, but it essentially just helps you with misspellings and large substitutions that go across multiple cases. So if you have a word that occurs multiple times in a file, but for example, in one instance it's camel cased, one instance it's all lowercase, then you can match all of those and substitute them in one command, which seems very handy. Commentary is just for comments, so just as you'd expect. Commenting things out, commentator selection. Yep, standard thing. Fugitive, I think we all know and love, is just Git within Vim, so you can do like g add or g commit and whatnot. It's a lot more powerful than that. If you are interested in it and haven't come across it before, then Drew Neal, I think he's called, on Vimcast has an excellent video on how to use Fugitive. So I would recommend that one. Speed dating is nice in so much as in normal Vim, as in Vim without the plugin, if, for example, you have 12 and then you do Command A or Command W on it, not Command W, Command X, sorry, it will increment and decrement the number. And with speed dating, you can do that with dates as well, which is nice. So if you have a timestamp and increment, say, the hours, and you go past 24, then it'll increment the day as well. Anyway, very nice. Vim Surround just allows you to quickly change the surrounding characters. So, for example, if you have single quotes and want double quotes, then it's just a quick way to do that. Syntactic, again, is another one that I think we all know and love. It's just a syntax checker that works across a whole range of languages and is pluggable as well. So even languages that it doesn't ship with, you can write a syntactic plugin for it. Very nice. And Vim Hybrid is just the theme. Moving on. Again, a lot of things in here you probably already have in yours. They're fairly default things that most people have. Backspace, for example, just going over everything. Expand tab, because spaces and tabs are for animals. Joking. No, I just prefer spaces, to each their own. Format options just set a variety of different things. The comments go through them better, but auto-wrapping text and comments at text width. Don't reformat a line if it goes into insert mode. If I go into insert mode on a line that's already past the 80 character text width, then adding L to the format options just prevents it from reformatting it, which is quite handy. And 1 just tells it to format before a one-letter word and not after. So yeah, if you have A as near sort of the end of where it reaches 80 characters, and then another word, it'll wrap before the A, so you don't have A just on the end of the comment on its own or line on its own. I didn't do a very good job of explaining that, but it's handy. It's nice for readability. J is one of the ones I definitely recommend you have in there when you, say for example here, I'll just add another comment line, and if I just select those, despite both lines having the starting comment character there, if you just Shift J to join the lines, then it'll get rid of the unneeded comment character, which is very nice. So another one that I would definitely recommend you have in there. List and list characters is just for highlighting spaces. So I'm not sure whether you can see on this, but if I have a load of spaces at the end of a line, it just shows them with characters. So yes, you just can sort of see really. No join spaces. Again, if you have a space at the end of a line or comment or something and a space at the beginning of another one, then it'll always just make sure there's one space between words and not two when you join. Again, something I'm not sure why you wouldn't want in there. Scroll off is when you reach the top or bottom of the window, and the window it's easier to demonstrate. The window has, or would have, scroll bars, as it were. There's overflowing text in the window. It just keeps three. I have it set to 3, so 3 lines of context when going up and down, so just quite handy. Shift round is nice, just always, every time you shift, for example, I have shift width to 2, so one tab expands to 2 spaces, and just make sure that it always goes to a multiple of shift width, so I'll never end up with 3 spaces or something. It'll always go 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. Side scroll is the same as scroll off, except that it's going horizontally, not vertically. And sorry, that was side scroll off. And side scroll means that when you have a line that goes over the edge of the window, rather than flipping a whole page, when you reach the end, it just goes character by character. So just nicer, again, for readability. Although I probably don't need that set now because I hard wrap and use text width these days, so I can probably get rid of that. But anyway, I suppose it's nice for if I inherit another editor config or something. As I say, text width is set and wrap is set. It's all fairly standard depending on your preferences, I suppose. This is just a bunch of wild ignores for files that I don't want wild list or control P to take any notice of. So again, these are all fairly standard things that you'll find in most RCs. Not very interesting. Visuals just sets the theme. I like having the cursor line highlighted. I like having search results highlighted. So for example, if I search for something, all the sets will get highlighted. Relative number is nice. I'm not sure why you wouldn't want it set. It's another one of those things where it shows you the line number you're on. For example, 152 here, but rather than showing me 153, 154, below it shows me 123. So for motions, if I wanted to go down to color scheme, for example, then just 4J rather than doing mental calculations quickly, which just easier. Hide the tab line, show line numbers, use 256 colors, and set the theme to hybrid. And these are just Mac Vim settings. So Menlo at 13 points seems quite nice for me. It's larger here because I figure for readability in this video it to be better. And just hide the scroll bars on windows and splits and things. Mappings. This is where most of my preferences are. Nicer defaults. Again, most people have these just Control J, K, L, H for split movement rather than Control W and then the same. JK for escaping because I use a Microsoft Sculpt and just the escape key isn't particularly nice and it's far away. So pass, I'll use JK, thank you very much. Line movements for soft wrapped lines. So you'll know if you've used Vim with soft wrapped lines, then lines that are wrapped, you would jump 2 or however many lines that are wrapped down to the next one. And GJ and GK, rather than just JK, go to the next visual line, as it were, rather than the next line number. if that makes sense. X sends characters that were deleted with X to the black hole register rather, sorry, just because it just clusters things up, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I've never pasted something from a register I've deleted with X. So yeah. End of line, beginning of line movements is just Shift H and Shift L. It's just nicer than going dollar and G underscore and things. And in the command mode down here, if I just type something, and you can just go A and E to go to the start and back of it, which again is just it's just what you used to really from terminals and things. As I said before, I have tab remapped to the % just because it's a lot easier. So that was for going to the matching block wrapper. So yeah, very nice. This just keeps the cursor positions when searching for the word under the cursor. So for example, on the normal no remap here, normally you'd go asterisk and it would search for everything but take you down to the next result, and again, not a fan of that. So it just does the normal asterisk but then CO, so it just takes you back to your previous cursor position. This is one that I find very handy, which is just a nice way to select a line. So normally if you wanted a full line, you'd go either YY or Shift V Y, but for YY it'll take the whole line with the break at the end, and if you VV to just select the line, then you can take just the selection and not the whole line with the line break. This is a sort of user error one. I'm very prone to not letting go of Shift quickly enough when entering visual mode, and end up going to the man pages, which I almost never want. Well, never want really. So that just fixes that. Control C, Control P, just quick ways to copy to the system clipboard, and exclamation mark just takes you, it puts in the cursor and exclamation for you. So just a quick way of going to the external command mode. It's going to be quite long. I'm sorry about that. Oh well. Buffs and tabs. Leader Q for closing a buffer and going to the previous one, and leader W is probably have one mapping out of everything I have in here. Leader W is the most handy, well, the one that I'd most recommend you have in yours, just because :W carriage return every time is a pain, an unnecessary pain. Switching between buffs and tabs. I don't use tabs a lot, so just leader L and leader H, sort of leader plus the right and left movements as you'd expect, and I just double leader for tabs, so leader L and H, which works very well for me. Files is just mostly Control P settings, but I have my mapping for just opening Control P to search for files, to search for buffers, and I haven't seen many people do this, but it's something you can do, which is map Control P to search a path outside of your project path. So that's what these two do. One goes to just where my blog posts are kept, and the other goes to my notes in Google Drive. This one is quite nice. It will open Control P to search the directory that the file you're currently editing is in. I find this one quite handy, so that's another one you might want to add to yours if you don't already have it. gundo we saw earlier, it's just a mapping to toggle it. Display. I use leader F to open and close folds. I use double leader F to, if I just open a few folds here, and I want to close all the folds but the one that my cursor is in, I just go leader F. Why is that not working? Oh, I'll look at that after. That's strange. Anyway, normally I'd go leader F and it will close all the folds but the one I'm in. But it isn't doing that for some reason. Anywho, leader carriage return just to hide search highlighting. So you do a search, highlights a bunch of things, leader carriage return, and it will get rid of those. Whoops. Just get rid of these. What was I? Editing. Did we do editing? No, we didn't. Okay. These are quite handy. I had a post on my site about these recently. For moving lines around. What is that? Something strange is going on here. Anyway, yes, for moving lines up and down in a file, just it'll either take the line you're on or a selection and just move them up and down, but it'll match the indentation. So as you go in and out of parent blocks, then it'll match the indentation needed for the block. So that's quite handy as well. Uppercase Q just reformats the paragraph you're editing. So if you use if you hard wrap things like I do, then just quite handy for rejigging everything to to be properly wrapped. Auto indent pasted text, fairly self-explanatory. Blank lines in normal mode is just carriage return. We'll just insert new lines in normal mode, really. N is remapped to go to the next search result, but keep it in the center of the screen, so you don't have to keep looking around. This is a custom function which you saw earlier, which just goes in and out of Goyo, but sets spell as well. So coming out it'll set no spell, and going in it'll set spell. Search replace the word under the cursor. So obviously you can do asterisk to search for the word under the cursor, and I just map leader asterisk to take the word under the cursor, in this case normal no remap, and fill in everything for a substitution for that word. It's quite handy. These are mappings for the ACK plugin. So the normal mode one will just ACK for whatever you put in, but one that I use quite a lot, which I won't do in here because my vimrc is in my home folder and I don't want it indexing the whole machine. But leader A on the selected characters or word or whatever it is you have selected will act the present working directory for that selection. So that's one that I would recommend you add into yours as well. Add into your vimrc as well. Quite handy. Going down, sorting. Something I do a lot. I like having CSS properties sorted alphabetically, for example. So leader S will just do a normal sort, but if I'm in CSS or SAS or something, then leader uppercase S will sort everything within the enclosing curly braces. So it just takes the visual selection part out of it, which is just saves a few keystrokes. And these are just mappings for fugitive, so blame, diff, status, and split dirty files, which is a function I got from Steve Losh's vimrc, which is quite handy. It just basically closes everything and then opens splits. Excuse me. Open splits for all the files that have uncommitted changes. Abbreviations, fairly standard. I have one for copyright, for trademark, for arrows, for my email address. Email address is one that you might not have, which is fairly handy, and I use the arrows quite a lot as well. So just go that, and it'll stick an arrow in there for you. These are just mostly spelling settings. So I want Great British English rather than US English, for example. And I set a spell file, which is basically an extra dictionary you can tell Vim to check against. So there are a bunch of words like JavaScript or something that Vim by default will tell you isn't a word, is misspelled. And if you set a spell file with all the words that are actually words, but Vim doesn't know about, then it won't tell you those are misspelled. And that's just a variable that's used by my prose mode function, which we'll see in a second. Auto commands here just set file types. You may or may not have come across this, but as with a few different things, you can match a sort of the start of a file type with a whole different host of extensions within curly braces. So this will match anything .es6, but also anything .es6.erb. And same thing here, JSCS, JSHint, and ESLint. And this is quite a good example, actually, because it'll match anything dot those extensions and then RC at the end. So instead of writing out a set file type for JSCS, for JSHint, for ESLint, RC for all of them, you can just do it in one line. It's quite handy. Set.md to markdown files. I believe .md is actually a format that, although a lot of us use for markdown, is actually another file format. It isn't a file format that I use, but as I say, I use it for markdown. So I just set that to automatically set the file type for markdown. So Vim Polyglot gets all the right things and whatnot. This will just update the split sizes when Vim is resized. So it's quite handy just to avoid all the splits getting messed up. It avoids you doing Command W equals whatever it is. This is another very handy one from Steve Losh's vimrc, which only sets the cursor line for the split that you're in. So if I do a split for my vimrc, then you can see that the cursor line is here but isn't here, and when I switch across, it hides the cursor line in the split that isn't active. So very nice. And I have it set to write everything when Vim loses focus, which has just caught me out a few times, especially when you modify a file, forget to write it, switch to a different buffer, it's no longer visible, you go and reload a page or something, and the changes aren't there as you'd expect. So that just writes all of the unsaved files, and it just avoids a lot of headaches. And lastly, functions. The toggle one, as I said before, just toggles goyo and sets spell coming into it, and going out of it, it sets no spell and untoggles goyo. And split dirty files is taken word for word from Steve Losh's vimrc and does what it says on the tin, really. So there we have a rather rambly tour of my vimrc. I hope there's something at least mildly interesting in here for you. If not, I apologize for taking up 48 minutes according to this. That's without it being edited though. Anyway, however long you've been watching this for, thank you. I hope there was something of use in here for you, and I will see you at some point in the future. Have a good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever time it is where you are, and as I say, I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.